Oh yes, here's a good one. This one from Landia. There's talk of the possibility of a national strike coming to Britain. Let's take a look at that.
What would happen if patriotic people in this country all went on strike at the same time? What would the impact be from that? What kind of...
I mean, if they could actually pull it off, it would be bedlam. It would be chaos, and the ruling elite would be absolutely shitting themselves.
Changes could be forced by that sort of action. Well, that's the topic of today's video, and the reason I'm making it is because there is a growing activist organisation that wants to find out the answer. The Great British National Strike, a protest movement headed by a chap called Richard Donaldson, and they want you to down tools next year.
Elections cancelled. Citizens jailed for opinions and jokes. Anti-government sentiment is censored and shut down. A totalitarian state with surveillance measures, the removal of a fair trial by jury, judges donating to and supporting left-wing organisations. Police forces are only solving 7% of crime nationally, yet police forces are still finding the time to investigate hurty words. Primary school children being indoctrinated in ways I can't say on here, otherwise this video will be taken down. They're allowed to do it, but if I speak about it, I will get in trouble. We have a broken healthcare system, a broken housing system. Illegals are given priority, workers are worse off, benefit recipients are better off. Our own Prime Minister is committing fraud. Our own Chancellor is committing fraud. MPs are being caught with on their phones and then they are let off. However, grandmothers are being jailed for opinions posted on Facebook, and you want to carry on as normal and hope that things will all get better in time. It won't. Come on now, we need to act. We need mass.
You're not going to vote your way out of this.
Non-compliance, we need a national strike. It will only get worse from here. Please, please believe me. I genuinely believe that is what's happening. So please choose now whether to allow this or to stand against it. 1 week, baby. 2nd of February. Let's do this.
Look, I don't know Richard personally. However, I am willing to assume that he is a good faith actor in this space. And that's for two reasons. First of all, his messaging has actually been really consistent for the last year or so. And second of all, he's a veteran. So I'm willing to give him the benefit of the doubt. And in that short video clip, you heard that he wants you, in fact, he wants all of us, to join him for a strike next year, February the 2nd to February the 9th. That is a full working week.
That's what's known as a general strike. That's when not necessarily one particular union or a company's employees or something like that goes on strike. That means when you have a general strike, that means everyone, and I mean everyone, in a country, they just stop working. Like the whole economy shuts down for at least a day, but in this case, a week. And without all that activity, a lot of businesses start to feel the pain. The big ones have enough working capital that they can survive for a long time. But it gets people's attention. It really gets people's attention. Thing that concerns me, though, British government will probably take the same approach as the Canadian government with the trucker protest. And they are more than likely just going to start finding the shepherds, the leaders of the group, and just putting them in jail. And anyone else that they can trace to this sort of movement, they'll debank them. Those are the big tactics that you can expect to see against people trying to organize a general strike in Britain. You'll be jailed, you'll be debanked, possibly subjected to fines, possibly subjected to police surveillance and harassment. They're going to try and put a scare in these people and get them to back down. And they are going to have to have backbones of just absolute titanium, because this is a system that is quite used to getting its way. And when it doesn't get its way, it starts to hurt people in unimaginable ways and act completely psychotic about it, to the point where it becomes evident they really do not care about the people that they govern. We're not dealing with mentally sound people. We are dealing... A lot of them are sociopaths and psychopaths who will do anything to cling to power.
And keen-eyed viewers amongst you, who've been watching this channel for some time, will realise that this is actually the second video I've made about Richard Donaldson and the Great British National Strike Project. Because I made a video about 7, maybe 8 months ago, in which I was actually quite critical. I said that I wasn't 100% sure that this was really going to achieve anything. Why was I critical? Well, I was critical because they had organised one strike day, and it was on a Saturday, which I felt, largely was quite pointless. Now, that went ahead and people did come out to protest, but how much impact is that really going to have? And does that really count as a strike?
It was a
I would say
testing
probably
ground.
not. But this is...
It was a test to see if they could actually pull anything off, before they really tried to pull off the big one. It was a test run. The big one will be a week of general strikes.
Something completely different, isn't it? This is a full working week. It's a much bigger ask from you, but potentially with a much bigger impact. So will this actually work? By which I mean to say, will this actually achieve anything? And you could be forgiven for being quite demoralised about the prospect of protests in this country, because we've had protests, haven't we? We've had big protests. It was only, 6 or 7 weeks ago now that we had the Unite the Kingdom rally in London, in which at least 500,000 people showed up to voice their anger in the centre of London. And what did it achieve? Absolutely nothing, as far as I can tell.
Yeah,
at the same time, factor in all of the individual protests outside of migrant hotels, which have also, unfortunately, achieved basically nothing.
Fuck all.
Because it doesn't seem to matter how angry citizens in this country get, the politicians will simply ignore you.
No, they will ignore you, they will call you racist, they will call you far right, and if you continue to make noise and annoy them, they will have you arrested and put in jail. They will have you harassed and quote-unquote investigated by police. They will basically commit death by 1,000 cuts to you, because they have the time, they have the money, they have the resources, they have the power to do that. If they could get away with killing you, they would do it by now. But that would be a bit too messy, and that would put too much heat and the spotlight on them, so they don't do that, for now.
And they will go back into work, hide behind their armed security, put their fingers in their ears and simply not listen. So yes, you could be forgiven for being demoralised, but there are some more positive signs coming out of the continent. Coming out of the European continent, that is, because
You have to do whatever you can. Whatever it takes to throw a spanner in the works, that's what you have to do. It doesn't have to be this big, grandiose display. It can just be small things that build up over time. It worked for a lot of countries in the Soviet Union. It all just built up over time until the whole thing collapsed. But it can be done.
a couple of days ago, the entire Bulgarian government actually resigned because there were protests taking place in Sofia, the capital, that were just going on for days and days and days. Non-compliance, right? People were just there day after day after day, and eventually the Bulgarian government caved and said, fine, we quit. And this comes about a year after the Serbian Prime Minister had to do something similar, responding to a similar set of circumstances. So maybe there is something to this idea of actually blocking out a week and saying, actually, for this whole week, we're going to disobey. Maybe that is the golden ticket to getting the Labour Party out. Not saying, well, you know, every 5 or 6 months we're going to spend 3 or 4 hours in London. No, that's not sufficient. They know that they can just ride that out. But what happens when people start doing this routinely for days and days at a time? Maybe that is the solution. However, Bulgaria and Serbia both have something that we here in Britain do not. They have an ethnically homogenous population.
They also have younger populations too, from what I understand. Meanwhile, the native population in Britain is greying. It's getting older. In
Serbia, it's just Serbs, and in Bulgaria, it's just Bulgarians. Now, for the people who are going to nitpick in the comments, yes, there are very tiny populations of Roma Gypsies in both countries, and there are some Russians in Serbia, but by and large, it is ethnically and culturally homogenous. And so the state in both of those countries cannot divide people against each other within the country. It simply won't work because they're the same people. I mean, they can try based on class lines, but it's simply not going to be as effective. That is a strength that the citizens in Serbia and Bulgaria have, which we do not. And let me tell you why that's relevant. One of the things that Rich and the guys at the Great British National Strike would like to see is remigration. is the process of some kind of policies which aim to have people going back to their own ancestral homelands.
Migration.
That way we can ease the burden on the NHS, housing, social care, etc., etc. Fine. But you're not going to be able to unite a significant part of the country towards the cause of remigration, right? They're not going to go and join you on strike if you want remigration because, well, 35% of the population of England and Wales are themselves foreigners, by which I mean first, second or third generation migrants.
They don't have a stake.
So, you know, that would be like the turkeys voting for Christmas. They're not going to join you in that cause. And why do I bring this up? I bring it up to make a broader point, right? For so long now, you've been told this dogma and mantra that diversity is your greatest strength, but it's just fundamentally not true, is it?
No. Diversity is just... It's just a way of slowly edging out and wiping out white people. That's all it is. In the long run, that's what it's all about, is white genocide.
If you are a citizen, right, versus the state, let's put it that way, and you're both competing in terms of power, the citizens want, you know, some kind of power over their future, the state wants ultimate power over everything, well, if the citizens are diverse, that's a massive weakness. If they all have different ideas and they're parts of different ethnic groups and they want different things, that's a really big problem because they are never going to be able to unite against the state.
Yeah, they'll fight each other, which the state will use to its advantage to accumulate greater power and to ultimately just oppress the people. It happens every time, without fail. You can have a free but homogenous society, or you can have a multicultural authoritarian society. But you can't have a free multicultural society. It doesn't work that way.
They simply cannot. And so, yeah, diversity is your greatest strength, right? But not really, because that phrase has existed for about 20 or 30 years. But there's a phrase which has existed for a lot longer. Divide and conquer. And tragically, I see that that is kind of what's happened to most European countries. Mm-hmm. The citizens have become divided through mass immigration, and therefore they are more readily able to be conquered. Now, that all sounds quite negative, and you could be forgiven for thinking I'm trying to put you off any kind of strike action or suggesting that maybe you shouldn't get involved, but that's not true at all. I say all of that just as a form of expectation management, if you like. It's not going to be the entire country rallying around this cause. It simply isn't.
No.
And yet I do still believe that this could have a massive impact.
Yeah, it doesn't take many people to make an impact. You just have to have enough people to make an impact. Not everyone has to be organized. You just have to organize enough people.
That's for a variety of reasons and in a variety of ways. But let me just give you one that I can think of. If there is a sense of political and economic uncertainty in this country, then investors will be less likely to buy UK government issued bonds. Now, why is that relevant? Why does that matter? Well, because right now the government is borrowing well over £100 billion a year from the bond market, mostly just to spend on welfare and other crap.
Yeah, they're borrowing money to spend it all to fulfill their obligations. And eventually get to the point where they have to just borrow to service the debt. Most countries in the world are effectively bankrupt. Nobody really has the courage to call it what it is. And also, nobody wants to be the one to formally default. And people especially are afraid of flipping that switch of jubileeing debt. Because typically when you try to do that, or when you can't pay up, that's when other countries, especially your debtor nations, start wanting to declare war. Because they figure if they kill enough people, then they really don't have to worry about paying off that debt. That's how a lot of wars ultimately end up breaking out, is one country, at least in the modern era, one country owes a lot of money to other countries, can't pay up, and so the countries that it does owe money to end up invading, or those countries are invading as a proxy for globalist financial institutions.
But the point is this: if the bond market...
Most wars are effectively banker wars, and they have been for the past few hundred years.
Buyers, the market itself, look at the country and say, hang on a minute, You've got people going on strike, people are downing tools. You know, I'm not sure I really want to buy bonds off this government. It's not looking all that secure to me anymore. Well, then the interest rates will rise, because that is kind of the way that the market decides, actually, yes, this is looking a little bit more risky, but you're offering me a higher rate of interest, so I'll take the bond. Okay. But if that keeps going on and on and on, and the government has to keep refinancing this short-term debt at higher and higher interest rates, then it starts to get even more precarious. Then the bond market looks at it and says, hang on a minute, you're borrowing way more than you can afford. Like, you're going to struggle to pay back the interest on this. And so it starts to look like an even riskier investment. And you end up in a bit of a death spiral where they start saying, well, actually, I don't want 10% interest rates anymore. I want 15 or 20 or 25%. Then the government simply cannot borrow any more money from the bond market. So they only have a couple of choices left. Massive welfare spending reductions, which is what they should have done in the last budget, or massive tax rises, which is what they chose to do. Once you start getting into...
Sometimes they even do both. Cuts in government spending plus tax increases. That's what they mean when they start talking about what's known as austerity.
You know, forcing a Labour government to do welfare spending. Well, the backbenchers who don't understand the bond market, they're going to rebel. The whole thing is just going to fall apart. So yes, I do still think that this could have a real tangible impact on the country and potentially force the Labour government out early. So I'm not here suggesting that this kind of action isn't worthwhile doing in the first place.
It's worthwhile doing, but a day is certainly not long enough. I don't even know at this point if a week is going to be long enough. This may be something that will have to drag on for weeks, possibly months, in order for the government to really feel the pain.
I just want to manage your expectations a little bit. It's not going to be 50 million people flooding out onto the streets. Because even though there probably are 50 million people who are very unhappy in Great Britain, they're not all unhappy for the same reasons, right? So just expectation management. Final thoughts from me. Will enough people actually come out and take part in this strike? I don't know. I have no idea. The only thing I can do to contribute to it, realistically, is to lend my platform and raise awareness that this is taking place, and then individuals themselves will have to decide what they want to do. I do think this kind of thing tends to snowball, right? It starts out small and then it gets bigger and bigger and bigger. And perhaps that was the justification for having the first strike day on a Saturday, so that people are aware of it, know what it is, and they sort of look around and realize other people will join them. But do I think enough people are going to come out, at least on this first striking day, to make a big difference? I don't know. I fundamentally don't know. Possibly, yes, because I do think there are a lot of people in this country who are absolutely petrified for what the future holds. And yeah, I don't really blame them, if I'm completely honest. But will they actually go as far as to doing something about it? We'll see. I don't want to put the prospect down. I hope that people are starting to realise just how dire the situation is. You know, let me put it to you this way. I hear all the time this talk of like, oh, civil war's coming to Britain. Well, maybe if people don't come out and strike and take part in this action, maybe some of you will realise that actually that's not as likely as you seem to think it is. There are still people who have too much to lose. Way too much to lose. If the vast majority of the country still has way too much to lose by taking 1 week of strike action, then yeah, civil war is a million miles away, right? That's a whole different kettle of fish. I think, and I've said this before in previous videos, that the only way you see some kind of civil war in this country is if enough people are truly hopeless, they've lost their jobs, the economic prospects are dire, and they see basically no future. That's when people become, you know, willing to take more extreme sort of measures. And God forbid we ever actually get there, right? But when it comes to this sort of strike action, I guess we'll see a real reflection of the mood of the country. Like, are people willing to go and do something about their endless complaints? And I don't know. I guess we'll see. I'm not trying to do this down, and in fact I think me making this video will help raise awareness of the whole issue, but I'm just giving you my honest thoughts. I could sit here and I could tell you what you want to hear, which is that, yeah, this is going to be the big thing that absolutely crushes the government. But it depends on people coming out to actually get involved, to actually take part, to make this work. Not to sit on Twitter and look at it and say, oh, look, yeah, some people actually did go on strike. That's cool. You know, whilst you're still in work or whilst you're still doing whatever you do normally. That isn't going to cut it, right? Yeah, you know, it's a call to action, I guess, to everyone. And if you yourself are not willing to take part in this kind of action, you can't really expect that other people will also. It's a bit weird for me, right? Because I make YouTube videos. So what do I do on that specific day? Do I just stop making YouTube videos? I guess, or for a whole week. I mean, sure. I mean, it's not really a problem for me. The thing is, if it was going well, I'd probably quite like to make videos about what is happening. I mean, if there are people coming out onto the streets to protest every day, I'd probably want to talk about that. But maybe I wouldn't be allowed because that would be breaching the strike terms. I don't know. Look, it's fascinating. I'll definitely be watching out for it. I think it's very, very interesting. If this is the kind of thing that you think could be successful and that you want to see work, then I would say the onus is on you to yourself take part and raise awareness of it, right? Because if you're not willing to do that, if you're not willing to do even the most basic legwork towards making this work, it can't be down to one guy. It can't just be down to Richard Donaldson to rally every patriotic person in this country to action. You know, it requires word of mouth. It requires individuals saying, yes, we'll all do this. We'll get behind this.
And you'll actually have to fucking do it. You can't just talk about it. You can't just tweet about it. You can't just post about it on social media. You have to get out in the streets and do the fucking work. Otherwise, this will all amount to nothing. And it remains to be seen whether or not this will amount to something. If it doesn't, then perhaps, yeah, we need to consider this strongly the possibility that there is no hope for Britain, that nothing is going to bring people out.
If people aren't willing to get behind it, then it simply isn't going to work. I think I'm just repeating myself in circles now, so I'll leave it there. But yeah, thank you very much for watching this video. Please do leave a like, comment, and subscribe. By the way, if you're wondering whether or not I bought the exact same jumper as the other one that I often wear, but in a different colour, the answer is yes, I did, because this jumper is fantastic and I highly recommend it. I'm not even going to tell you what it is because people will think that it's some kind of advert, but yeah, it's a great jumper. Just talking crap now, aren't I? Thanks very much. See you in a future video.
Alright, that's good. That's good content. Good content from Landia.